Hi, I'm Valerie, and welcome back to Now Gardening. You're ready to start a garden, but there are so many choices that you might have a difficult time deciding which type of garden is the right fit. Maybe you don't have a lot of money, and so you want the cheapest option available. Or maybe you have a shortage of time. So to make the decision easier for you, I'll go through the different garden types based on their biggest selling points. In other words, what problem that they solve. Small spaces like apartments, I'll cover that. Limited sunlight, I'll cover that too. What if self-sufficiency is your goal? We'll talk about that, along with what is the cheapest garden, what garden requires the least maintenance, and what garden is the fastest to make. And of course, I'll go over the downsides of each too, so you know what you would be getting yourself into if you decided to choose that type of garden. Starting at number 1 is container gardening. And here I'm going to include buckets and any smallish container such as pots or grow bags. Basically anything that is mobile. Buckets and containers are usually the best choice for apartment gardening, indoor gardening, balcony gardening, and if you have a small outdoor space. They're also great if you don't have ideal sunlight and you need to move your garden around. Here, for example, right now I'm in shade, but an hour ago this was still full sun. After I finish this video, I'm going to move these to the western side of my house so that they can catch the afternoon sun. Now the downside, of course, is that you clearly don't have as much space as you do with a larger garden area, but you can do pretty well with the limited space that you have. Here I have everything growing from herbs to potatoes and garlic and turnips. I've also grown peppers and carrots in containers before, and we'll be trying out tomatoes this year. So now that we've talked about container gardening, let's talk about self-sufficiency. There's a reason that commercial farming uses this approach, because it allows you to grow a lot of food. And you might have guessed it, I'm talking about a machine plowed garden. This is a type of gardening that I grew up with and is clearly the easiest choice if you have a large plot of land that you need to cultivate. However, as you can imagine, it's expensive due to the machinery used unless you know someone who has a tractor or other machinery that you can borrow. But you might be saying, self-sufficiency, well, it's a nice goal, but it's not exactly where I am today. So you're just starting out and you're on a budget? What type of garden is the cheapest to make? Today I do have a traditional in-the-ground garden that I till manually using a broad fork. This type of garden is often a work in progress, but it's the best choice if you want the cheapest of all the gardening methods. A broad fork or garden fork and a trowel are the only investments needed for this type of garden spot. And if you live in an area that has a light topsoil like Iowa, where I used to live, then you will have a much easier time achieving this type of garden than I do here. Now it's time to move on to the fastest garden bed to make. But before I go into that, if this video has been helpful, don't forget to hit the like or subscribe button to see more like this. Now I'm back to the type of garden that takes the least amount of time to make. And you might have guessed it, I'm talking about no-dig gardening. And let me tell you why. This type of garden is a great option for someone who doesn't have a lot of time or for someone who's getting a late start on starting their first garden. Now I will link my video on how to start a no-dig garden fast in the comments down below, as well as my detailed video on the pros and cons of no-dig garden. But in summary, no-dig gardens are great in a pinch and when you want to guarantee the quality of the soil. Also, the weeds that grow here are easily removed. This type of garden can be a challenge for erosion though, so if you live in an area that is subject to flash floods, this might not be the best choice for you because the soil is loose and does tend to wash away in heavy rains. Well, what if cost isn't your biggest concern? You just want a garden that's going to give you minimal headaches or be easy on your back. Well, if you want a garden that is low maintenance, then raised beds might be the best option for you. This type of garden could be the best choice for you if you have a lot of garden pests. For example, I use my raised beds for all of my crops that are a little bit sensitive, such as spinach and lettuce, that would otherwise be eaten by slugs if they were close to the ground. Another great thing about them is that you design the height. So for example, I have one that is 45 centimeters or about 18 inches, and I have others that are 90 centimeters or 35 inches. This really helps for people that have reduced mobility or bad back. Also, the high-raised beds are relatively weed-free, and if an occasional weed pops up, they are easy to remove. Now the obvious downside is the cost. My high-raised beds are galvanized steel. Now galvanized steel is super low maintenance and will last a really long time. But if you're handy, you can build your raised beds out of wood or even other building materials like concrete blocks in order to control the cost. In general, you'll need at least a screwdriver and sometimes a drill depending on what type of raised bed you plan on building. Another cost is the cost to fill them up with soil. However, you can reduce this cost substantially by filling the raised beds partially with logs, sticks, leaves, and other similar things. But beware, the soil does settle over time and you will have to add more. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back next time.